We're rolling.
Okay. Welcome to the podcast. You're listening to Marketing Mondays with Meg, where business owners come to get honest, practical, and smart advice about how to market their business. I'm Meg Hewer, an award-winning marketing and brand strategist. And with me, as always, is my producer, Matt Heyer from Berg Brothers Media. Thanks, Matt, for being here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about creating content for your business. And I'm excited about our guest because he is the best at creating content. So with me today is Aaron Watson, the CEO of Piper Creative. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, Meg. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're excited because you are such a great content creator.
Thank you.
I follow you. I love what you do. And I think you have a lot that you can share with our audience and help us to be better content creators.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to help in any way I can. I think that it is, the company that I founded, Piper, is founded on the core belief that it is essential not just for marketers, but for all brands, all organizations to be doing it more effectively. And we enjoy helping people do that.
So tell us how you got started. What's your story?
So I am by no means a classically trained marketer. I studied economics and political science at the University of Pittsburgh, played ultimate frisbee there, won 2 national championships. So I was really like focusing on ultimate frisbee with like a little school on the side, and ended up starting a podcast because after doing everything right, 4 years in college, internship, banging resume, like wasn't breaking from the mold, the options that were available to me were very unappealing. They're like, you can be a financial advisor or you can go to grad school, and like nothing wrong with people who choose those paths, but it just I was like, is that really the only options that I have? And so the podcast started as a vehicle by which I could study and understand the people that were in really interesting careers and break apart how that actually works. So if I get to speak to someone like Jason Wolf, who founded multiple successful tech firms and has had exits of 8 and 9 figures, like, how does that guy operate? Well, he taught himself to code. He rolled his money that he made from one company into the next so that he didn't have to take venture capital. And now he lives as free, independent, and fulfilling a lifestyle and business as you can possibly imagine. That framework isn't taught to you by the Career Resource Center. That framework isn't given to you by your family, particularly if it's like mine, where there just weren't any entrepreneurs. There are plenty of good, hardworking, fantastic people, but there was no one who had gone out and done it on their own. So I needed the podcast as a vehicle by which to get those answers that I needed. And inevitably, there were other people that would be interested in those same answers.
That's so interesting that that's how it started. So how long have you been doing it now?
3.5 years.
Okay.
And we are putting out episode 382 on Monday.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And the whole game plan there, it's just a model that I learned from Ultimate Frisbee. I learned that I could accelerate my skills more in the competition by, like this, I'm going to say skipping water breaks, and it's not like you should definitely be hydrating, but we didn't need as long and as extended water breaks as we took. I would be like getting more throws in. Or if people were on the track 2 days a week, I was on the track 3 days a week. Or if they were going to the gym 2 days a week, I was going to the gym 4 days a week. So my whole model is I'm just going to do more than the competition, and my rate of improvement is going to be faster than anyone else's. And so there are other shows that are weekly. There are other shows that have 50 episodes or 5 episodes. It's not that it's like someone should be disparaged for being at that place at that point in time. But my whole game plan is I'm going to do more, and I'm going to build out my skill set at a rate that, allows me to beat the competition.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about content creation.
Yes.
So everybody knows it's important. Everybody, every business owner you talk to is talking about creating content, but I don't know if they really understand the why. Like why you should be creating content. Yeah. Tell us about that.
So the framework that we think about it, like really at its core, is that context compounds. So to use a perfect example, like almost everyone listening to this will know when I say the word Kardashian, who I'm talking about. Like it's that simple, in the same way that I could say Gandhi, see someone in your head. Ali, someone in your head. Like you could go down that list. All of those characters you have an immense amount of context on, and we can argue how much each of those characters actually did to like better society, right?
Different subject, yeah.
Precisely. However, at the core, like what is consistent between those is that you have a lot of context. When we find out that Kardashian sister number 5 is having their second child, that actually means something to people because of the well-defined context of other characters and other babies and other goings on in their life. If I tell you that John Smith down the street is having a kid, it's like, okay, people have kids all the time. The only reason that there's anyone caring is because there's so much context built around that. So many of the narrative plot points have been created that is assuming it's interesting. There's other people putting out content that aren't doing as well as the Kardashians, but assuming it's interesting, compelling, entertaining, and not just informative. It can be pure entertainment, pure like, I need to zone out, and people call it trash TV, still providing something to someone. And through that vehicle, as people accumulate more data points about you, more narrative plot points, break down why I'm here, I want to share some of my narrative plot points with other people. Then when the next thing happens, it actually means something because of the context around that thing. So when I announce Going Deep Summit 3.0, March 28th, downtown Pittsburgh, biggest venue ever, Union Trust Building, and how excited we are and who the speakers are, it means more because of Going Deep Summit 1 and Going Deep Summit 2. And the context of how the audience grew each time and how we already pre-sold more than 50 blind faith tickets when we haven't announced a single speaker yet and we're more than 8 months away from the event, that is built upon all of the context that we've invested in laying down for people so that they recognize why that's significant and why that matters. We're way smaller than South by Southwest. We pale in comparison to South by Southwest. If that was the only context that we had, we would be like, why does that matter? But when you see the upward trajectory, if you have maybe consumed a video or two of the previous keynotes, then all of a sudden you have this context of like, wow, this is a rising star. This is, a roller coaster that I want to get on now before it's a 2,000 person event and I'm just another face in the crowd. Right.
No, that makes sense. And I think you hit upon something that's really important, and that is being consistent with your content. And it's a big commitment, right? When you decide that you're going to create content, whether you're writing a blog or you're doing videos or whatever it is, it's not like, I'm going to do this for a couple of weeks and then I'm going to bail because I don't see any traction. I don't see anything happening. This is a marathon, right?
Totally. And what we're doing at Piper with our own content of having a vlog, multiple podcasts, stuff on Instagram, stuff on LinkedIn, all these different platforms, is we're trying to push the limits of what a small organization can do. And the model that I'm copying there, once again, going back to sports, is like all of the ways that, like, if you and I blow out our ACLs or something, the surgery that's happening was developed first for top end athletes. They're always trying to push the category forward with the people where, like, for some reason, it makes sense to go above and beyond. But the reason that we can all probably like walk again after tearing one of our ACLs is because of what was happening for high performance athletes. What we're trying to do with Piper, despite being a very small organization, is put out more content than any organization our size should possibly be capable of doing. But what that is training us to do is how to become brutally efficient and brutally emotionless about the content we put out. A lot of people, and I see it all the time with our clients, they're in front of the camera the first time. Ooh, do I have something on my face? Is my hair right? Ooh, the lighting's not right. I don't think I said it quite right. We have absolutely zero romanticism about what we're putting out because we have to get to the next thing. It's not going to get better in this single piece. It's going to get better on the next thing we shoot and the next thing we shoot and the next thing we shoot. And that understanding, I mean, like, go back and watch the first season of the Kardashians versus season 15. It is night and day. They've all gotten so much better. The cameras have gotten better. The mics, the whole thing has improved. And that's actually the game you're playing. The idea of we're going to invest thousands and thousands of dollars into our very first single piece of content when we've done no content before and we have no audience and no one that really cares because there's no context on our story, and like that one highly produced video is going to make all the difference, is completely misguided. It is the sequential accumulation of those context points and the muscle building of, like, I'm sure that you're more comfortable on episode 5 of your podcast than you were on episode 1. You're probably much more nervous, right?
For sure.
And
Absolutely.
You're going to be immensely more comfortable on episode 37 than you are right now. And that is what is going to be the leverage point for you to get the bigger guest and the larger audience and the deeper connection with your audience on this show beyond the fact that you've just continued to show up consistently. So that's the kind of framework that we're playing in, is recognizing that this is a muscle and you can either go about building that muscle yourself, or partner with other people who have other parts of the skill sets that come together to tell a great story. But at the end of the day, you're trying to build that context.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the whole issue of quality too, right? So it's not just quantity, but you have to put out something that people really care about.
Mm-hmm. And you're not going to figure that out without trying it. Like the way to figure out what people want is to go put it out to the market, go put it out to the platform and see how it's responded to.
Mm-hmm.
And not being terribly broken up when like it doesn't do well or the first mean comment potentially comes in, because that's happened. Like I was called a Nazi on LinkedIn, which is incredibly hard to do. I was making a comment about like just these blanket, connection requests that people make with no context. And I don't know what's going on. And the guy was like, look at this LinkedIn Nazi over here. And it's like, I'm kind of making fun of it, but like, it kind of like the first time you see it, like, ow, that like doesn't feel pleasant.
Yes.
But that doesn't stop you, because for as many people as might do that, there's also people that really enjoy it. And even frankly, it's not purely about like, what's the ratio of likes to dislikes, upvotes to downvotes, views to not views on this thing. Mm-hmm. It is about, are we authentically sharing our perspective, talking about what matters to us, and learning a little bit about what works so that we can continue to tailor and tweak moving forward.
So you make me think about another thing, and that is that I hear a lot of people saying, well, I need a lot of likes. I need a ton of followers. What's your feeling on quantity, versus quality? I feel, and I tell my clients, I think it's more important to have a higher quality audience than it is to have a ton of people who really don't care about what you're putting out.
Right. So raw, empty numbers are always going to be raw, empty numbers, like regardless of the metric. If we're talking about a print magazine where they like say that 8 people read every magazine that we print, like that's obviously baloney. On the flip side, there's views on Facebook that are someone watching your video for 3 seconds. Like there's a lot of videos that 3 seconds is not enough to get context for, and yet that's a view. Yeah. So you can always get yourself bamboozled by the metrics in any paradigm, digital or not digital. I would agree that like the quality of who you're interacting with really matters, but even taking it down to like, who are you trying to meet and build a relationship with? All of the interviews that I do for my podcast are people that in some way, shape, or form could be using the services that Piper offers, or in some way, shape, or form like have that sensibility. Maybe they're doing it themselves. Maybe there's another avenue by which they're going about it, but like they're people that it makes sense for. So you could argue that every single podcast I'm doing is a biz dev meeting, and that's someone who could potentially be hiring Piper to go do what they want to do. And they might also not necessarily realize that. We released an episode a couple weeks ago with Joel Reed from I Am Robotics. They raised $20 million in a Series A to build these robots that stack shelves. They're going to completely disrupt warehouses. And they primarily need software and robotics engineers. However, at some point, they're going to probably want or need some form of content creation to get their brand out there, to connect with the people that run warehouses, the people at large Fortune 500s, and who in Pittsburgh might they think of to help them?
Right, for sure.
Piper.
Yeah, absolutely. So that totally makes sense. And I think that you have helped people realize that it is not just, I hear so many people saying, well, I just want everybody to like me. I just want tons of people following me. And I think you make a good argument towards the quality issue.
Yeah, and a lot of people kind of like, they're fine, is very different than like a couple of people being like, that person rocks. Like that's one of my favorite characters around, or they really know their stuff. But if you're specific to a certain industry, like if we're talking about specifically how to brand and market construction companies in Western Pennsylvania, and that's all you do, then like really there's about 18 to 47 people that really need to have that opinion of you, and it doesn't matter. You can run a fantastic business without ever having anyone beyond those 47 people really care and like and appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So if we have a lot of business owners who are just trying to figure it out. So say they're sitting in their office right now watching this. What's your advice? How do they dip their toe in the water?
So the framework that I use is 4 C's. You start with consumption, then you go to comment and curate, and then you go to creation. So the starting point of consumption is if you are, however you're allocating your day, you've got work to do for your business, you've got family, whatever else, there is time in your day that you are allocating towards passive consumption of media. Now, if you are doing that on the Kardashians and you happen to be in the shipping and logistics space, then you should be reallocating some of that time to consume people in the shipping and logistics space who are doing a good job of messaging themselves, of creating content, of storytelling. You will probably very quickly come to realize that they are doing it in some ways that you don't like. And then that is when you start to get a taste and a sense for how you could be doing it differently. Simultaneously, consuming people who are doing a really good job of creating content on the platforms where you identify your audience may be. If I want to reach, the millennial hip generation, I probably have to go to Instagram to do that. If I want to reach B2B business owners between the ages of 40 and 60, I'm going to go to LinkedIn.
Right.
If I want to reach retirees, I'm going to be all over Facebook. Like, there are different age brackets that are more likely to be on those platforms and different psychologies. So go to where your audience will be, not where you want to be, where your audience will be. Consume that, start to understand what works and how to go about it. Then, as you consume good stuff, do two things. Curate some of that good stuff. So you're not going out and creating something from scratch from 0 all the way to 100, but start at the point of curation. Hey, I really like Meg's podcast. I learned about this knucklehead named Aaron who happened to be on her show. But that's your curation. That's your sharing and your starting point of like, now I know how to post. Now I know how to go about sharing a link. Maybe a couple people liked and interacted with it. Simultaneously, interact with the posts and the people that you like. So here's literally, you could stop right there and you don't have to go all the way to creating your own thing. Like, that's daunting. I recognize when I say that everyone needs to be creating content, some people are like, hell no. Can I curse on this? Is that okay? And that seems really daunting to them. You don't have to do that. You could literally stop at curating interesting stuff for your industry. If you're in shipping and logistics, show me every single week a roundup of the most fascinating news and links in this space that I, as someone also in the space, will find interesting and will have context for. People doing finance all the time. You can do it for your industry. I'm sure it's out there. Simultaneously, everyone else who is in that space, every time they share something, you should interact with it. So if Bob runs the big truck company that you want to be doing business with, it would make sense to thoughtfully comment on all of Bob's posts and not nice, congrats, you gotcha, betcha, but
something meatier.
Yeah, hey Bob, really enjoyed the context that you laid about how the change in natural gas prices is affecting our industry. Really made me think of X. Now, Bob, who probably only gets like 3 to 7 comments max on his post, unless he's an absolute top influencer, now he's like, well, who is this person? Let me check out their profile.
Right.
You have a properly written paragraph. You have a properly written tagline on your profile. I very quickly understand what you do. Doesn't mean I'm going to do business with you. That's not how sales works. Not every time you walk up and ask for the date, you get it. But you at least have the framework now that Bob knows you exist.
Absolutely.
How many businesses are even hoping for people to understand that they exist?
Yes.
And that's the starting point with the commenting and the curating. After that point, after you really feel comfortable and confident in those elements, you can go and start creating your own thing and recognize it's going to be tough and recognize that you need to find the platform that's right for you. Voice is happening right now. Like, that's a thing that people are saying, and I'm at an advantage of that because I have 380 podcasts under my belt. That does not mean that I think everyone should go directly into podcasting and pursuing voice. There are tremendously compelling, charismatic, attractive humans that should just stand in front of a camera and say anything, and they're going to see positive benefits from that. There are other people who struggle to even get 3 consecutive sentences out of their mouth, and that's okay. Maybe they should just write their ideas, edit them, and publish them on these different platforms. Starting with what do other people want is important, but balancing that with where am I comfortable communicating and where do I actually have that fluency has to be a part of the equation.
That's a really good point. Sort of knowing your strengths and what you can share in a really good way. Totally. Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So talking about podcasting, you were a really early adopter.
Yes.
And now the whole space is getting really full.
Yeah. So
for somebody who's thinking about doing a podcast, is it too late?
No, not at all. I think the number, now I'm going to mess this up, literally like less than 35% of Americans listen to a podcast regularly. And we still are waiting for, like, people still have old cars. New cars come with the ability to play podcasts or Bluetooth on them. That is still like changing over.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that like the for every advertising, let me get this right. The value of a radio listener right now, according to the allocation of advertising dollars, is 10 times the value of a podcast listener. And that's just because brands are allocating way more resources on radio than they are on podcasting. When they start to realize that more than 50% of podcast listeners make more than $75,000 a year, and they tend to be more educated, and they tend to be these exact type of characters that everyone is trying to reach with their marketing and advertising dollars, you're going to see those dollars continue to shift in the direction of podcasts. And not that that's solely representative of why it's worth the time, but what I'm trying to articulate there is simply that we are still probably in the third or fourth inning of the podcasting wave. We are far from the eighth or ninth.
And it's interesting because iHeart jumped in the last year. And in full disclosure, I worked for iHeart at one point in my career. And if they didn't see a potential monetary upside to that, they wouldn't have been in it. You know, so I think you're right on there.
Totally. Spotify is going all audio. It is, you know, Apple is breaking apart iTunes into music, books, and podcasting. It's going to be its own app. It's something that people are coming to understand, but it's so early. And back to like the idea of, you know, it's really, it's not early if you're like trying to be Tim Ferriss, you're trying to be Joe Rogan. That is getting harder by the day and really, really hard to do. However, it is far from over to like who has the best food podcast in Pittsburgh. I don't have a definitive answer to that, and I'm a podcaster in Pittsburgh. Like no one is jumping with an answer to the question, which means there's an opportunity there. No one is jumping to who runs the robotics podcast for Pittsburgh, despite the fact that we're Robot Center, CMU, all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's surprising nobody's doing that now that you say that. Yeah,
right?
Really
it
good
may be
point.
happening. I'm sure someone experimented with it. I'm sure someone quit after doing 8 episodes, but no one owns that corner. And it would be cool if Piper had a podcast that do that. Like I'm kind of selling myself on the idea right now, but someone else can go take that. Like it's not a done deal. And that's where the opportunity is. If you're trying to be Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, very difficult, but so many niches to be filled.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. So you're also a big proponent of LinkedIn.
Yes.
You know, and it's funny because I talk to clients and I have so many clients who say, well, I have a profile on there, but I really never do anything with it. Tell us why you like LinkedIn, why you're such a proponent.
It's the psychology of why you're on that platform. It's the platform that people go to looking to make big business deals, looking to learn something about their business, looking to make professional moves, which is not the case on literally any other platform. Some people on Twitter, some people on Instagram, but not everyone on those platforms, not everyone on Facebook. Everyone on LinkedIn is trying to do that. Simultaneously, you have a platform that is owned by Microsoft, as opposed to Instagram and Facebook owned by Facebook, Snap owned by Snap. You can go on down the list. Microsoft is the business software company. Like that is what they are built to do. They are putting everything they can into making LinkedIn the central network, the central platform for people's business and professional lives. The only risk to LinkedIn is that there's some sub-network specific to your industry that pops up and becomes more important. Outside of that context, that's where the attention is. That's where Microsoft is investing oodles of their own money. And that's also where there's less competition. If you go onto Instagram, you have to compete with the athlete dunking over 3 cars. You have to compete with the beautiful person with almost none of their clothes on. You have to compete with the music artist who has the absolute most cultural hipness and relevance. On LinkedIn, I get to compete against a demographic that's slightly less versed in some of this content creation in the digital space, simultaneously covering drier topics, like talking about the intricacies of an org chart, or I went to shipping and logistics because I like going to something that a lot of people like glaze over when they start to hear about. But if you can make that interesting, you are on a very distinct corner and you are going to win unequivocally. So I like going to a place where I can see where the winners will be and they're not there yet. Right now on LinkedIn, you have people who are, once again, not particularly well versed in media creation, creating stuff that isn't very good. They're like taking a picture of the table at the convention with like nothing at it, and it's slightly fuzzy and out of frame and poorly lit. And it's like, I don't know why this is even being posted. Then you have people who are very digital media savvy, who are also very young. They have no real depth of professional experience. And they're talking about inspiration and hustle and like no shame on their game, respect, but like they can't talk about the time they closed the 7-figure deal while they were pregnant, flying overseas to London and getting back in time to see their kid at the baseball game. Like that's a fascinating story that is super relevant to a professional audience trying to find work-life balance, and only the person with the experience can accomplish that.
Yes, right. Yeah. And I think LinkedIn is just underutilized at this point. I don't think, where you can look at a Facebook or an Instagram and you can have the question, has it had its day? With LinkedIn, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're really just starting to scrape the iceberg.
Not at all. I would say that like Snap had its moment 2013, 2014. Instagram really had its moment 2015, 2016 after stealing Snap's features. And like 2018, 2019 is LinkedIn. I think that it will go away without a doubt. Like if someone's listening to this right now, like, yeah, this guy might have a point. Go ahead, wait till 2021. You're going to regret that you did.
Yeah. And there'll be some other, reiteration of LinkedIn at some point that'll be better and bigger than what we have now.
The next thing is actually people going to small specific segments, very tailored around who they are and what they do. So like I'm a business nerd, so I like bouncing around everything, and I'm also trying to learn the LinkedIn platform, so I'm paying more attention to it. But there's people who are in construction who pop onto LinkedIn and they're like, man, I don't get what this one kid is talking about in his backyard, and I'm not particularly interested in like B2B enterprise SaaS. But I would love a world where what I'm consuming is very curated to construction in my industry and different contractors and news there. And you have to be really savvy to like understand how to unfollow and follow the right people to really curate your feed that way. So I think what's going to come in is you're going to see like a micro network that's nowhere aiming to chase the scale of LinkedIn, but will be so tailored, specific, and valuable to that person that I just picture in my mind that they'll really live on that kind of micro network. But that's not here yet. Like we don't, like nothing's coming to mind when I talk about that, and it may exist, but it hasn't reached the scale that it will probably in 3 to 5 years.
That will be a very cool thing when that happens.
Yeah, totally.
I love that idea. You should do that.
Yeah, I've got a long list of things I got to be doing.
That's a great idea. So one of the other things that you're doing that I think is really cool, and you alluded to earlier, was your Going Deep Summit.
Yes.
And so when people think about creating content, so often they're thinking of creating a blog or something like that, and they don't think about events as content and ways to connect with people. Is that why you started that? Where did that come from?
So there's a lot of elements to it. This is really an outgrowth of my podcast and having these digital touch points with people and never in real life. And every time I'd meet a listener in real life, they'd be like, oh my God, I listened to this episode. I loved it. Like it made me think of this. And that's a fantastically fun experience for me to have. But like that wasn't scaling, and there was clearly an appetite for more. Like there's an appetite for live events for 2 reasons. People want to show people where they are. They want to take the LinkedIn photo that I articulated or the Instagram story and be like, look at how cool, smart, thoughtful I am to attend an event like the Going Deep Summit.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, they want to be around the people in real life that have their similar perspectives, values, frame of reference. Like it's a certain type of person that wakes up on a Saturday, goes to a conference all about bettering yourself, understanding the world, expanding your mind, filling your heart, growing your tribe. Like that's a certain type of person. Sure. And for a lot of people, they're like, hell no.
Yeah.
But for certain people that's like, hell yeah,
right.
Then they get to be around a bunch of other people that also said, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is what we aimed to create. And then the framework around how to build that is all the speakers are basically more, I think like not all but one are previous guests on the podcast. And they're the people that when they were on the podcast, I was like, damn, this person's articulate and thoughtful and creative and interesting. I would love to share more of them with people. Yeah. Simultaneously, as anyone who does a really good job of building music festivals, they know that there's 2 things. You need to catch acts, the right acts, but you need to catch them when they're like on their come up.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, Thrival I don't know if I can say this. Thrival signed the Chainsmokers to play at their event before they really blew up. And what happens with artists is after they blow up, their booking fee goes up.
Yeah, right.
And so if you got them at one fee before the fee went up, you like just captured a huge amount of value by doing that.
Right.
And with a lot of these music festivals, it's not just the headliners, but also like being able to curate the list of other people on the come up so you can say 2 years later, look back, we had X, Y, and Z back then. Like, guess who you're going to listen to now, even if you don't know all the names.
Yeah.
And that's how you build cred. So similarly, like Ed Lattimore, I think, had about 15,000 Twitter followers when he was the opening keynote of the Going Deep Summit. He now has probably over 100,000, massive following on all these other platforms, multi-best-selling author, and like a lot of, you know, people that I think are really interesting, like actually really dig his stuff. Yeah. And I knew that he was incredibly articulate because he had been on the podcast 8 months earlier. I also had the relationship to say like, hey, Ed, I'm running an event. It's going to be cool. Trust me. Will you be the opening keynote? And like, he wanted to be the opening keynote. There's all sorts of other dynamics to why he would say yes. Yeah. But that competitive edge of like knowing what's going on in this type of space is something that I get to leverage and people come to expect when they attend the summit because they may know one or two. Like there are people that went last year and they knew who Giselle Fetterman was and they knew who Kenny Chen was because of all that they do right here in Pittsburgh to better people's lives, be incredibly thoughtful, but they didn't know about Alan Gannett. Alan Gannett came up from DC. He was the closing keynote. And I had people who didn't even attend the summit come up to me and be like, I heard Alan had like a crazy good keynote. And that's because Alan speaks internationally. Like he is genuinely one of the smartest humans that I've ever interacted with and has read dozens and dozens of academic journals about how to make yourself more creative. So when he gives a presentation that he's done however many dozen times about creativity based off of his book, The Creative Curve, and people haven't come across that before, it is like an absolute smack in the mouth. And you're like, I can't believe I paid less than $100 for this ticket. Yeah. So that's the experience that we get to create. And it is also the community that we get to build who, when we build this credibility of Going Deep Summit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, onwards and upwards, they see the growth. They see the thoughtful design that we put into it. We see that we're not there to just grab people's money and shove our sponsors down their throats, but to actually give them a great experience. Then when we do business unit 3, 4, 5, 6 of Piper, we've built the foundation of context that allows people to say, hey, I'll give that new thing Piper's doing a try. Doesn't mean that they're going to buy, doesn't mean they're going to be clients forever, but they'll give us a try, which is exactly what you're hoping for when you're launching something new, that people will be willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, it makes total sense. That's awesome. So at this point in the podcast, we typically will give 3 things that people can take away from this today that they can implement in their business sometime this week. So the first thing I want to talk to people about is how to get their toe in the water. So you kind of talked about, like, I had some things here, but yours was a lot better. So you're basically saying the first thing they should do this week is to start figuring out what content they like.
Consume, then comment and curate, and then create. And those words are close and I'm starting to get tongue-tied. But consume on the platforms that are relevant to who you're trying to reach and start to understand what is going on there and why it's working. And like think critically. It's the difference between like just going to a movie and getting mashed in the face by the Avengers and all the spectacle versus like, how did they shoot that specific scene? Interesting that they switched cameras there. Like it's a critical eye and appreciating why they're doing what they're doing. Why is this person filming this video in their car? Is that the only place that they can record? Is that where they feel most comfortable and they can control the audio? Like what's going on there and start to actually break apart why that is happening in that way.
Okay, I love that. The second thing I'd like to suggest is that this week they put together a content calendar of some sort, because I think what happens is we get overwhelmed when we think about creating content. And so then we sit down to write something or to do a video and we don't know what to do, right? So is that something that you guys ever do?
So we have the podcast episodes scheduled out, but there's so much, and we like at some point what we will have is a specific Aaron Watson brand director character, but we're probably 10 people away from being able to like have that be a full-time role where they will like manage the entire hose of content that's being that's coming out. Right now that's on me, and I don't even have the bandwidth to like be managing a calendar. So what happens is Kelsey and AT and the other characters on our team send me what they're making. I throw it into a folder, and then when it's like time to post, which, you know, today will be when I get back to the office after this interview. Some days it's first thing in the morning. Like there's no particularly specific strategy there, but it's a folder. I'm like, hey, we haven't posted anything about Kurt Schneiders in a while. Let's post this one of the former CIO of Dick's and L Brands and like share this little video on LinkedIn. So it's we have a system, but it is not particularly regimented.
And in your case, you're creating a ton of content. So for most of these folks that are listening to us today, they're not in that situation. So creating some sort of a system for them would help make it easier.
And I'm really focused more on the systemization of the creation as opposed to the systemization of the publishing. Because like the publishing, when, how, like it should be 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock is so much less important than, are you serving your audience with this piece? Are you saying something compelling? Could the copy of this post be tweaked and see 15% more engagement or views or resonate with people on a deeper level? And that's the systemization that you should be prioritizing over like, well, we post every Friday at 3. And it's like, well, I know that matters to you, but to basically everyone else, that's not what people are processing. Their processing is this story compelling and does it matter to me?
Right. And it's funny because I do have clients that get really caught up in that, you know, what's the best time of day to do it? What day of the week? And just put it out there. Just get it out, you know. Don't get caught up in all of that little detail. The other suggestion I would have that you can do is to batch your content, right? Because it can be, it's very time consuming to produce all of this. And if you do one at a time, it's going to take a ton of time out of your day. I'd like to batch mine. Is that kind of how you do that?
Yeah, generally that's the case. You know, we're on a podcast right now. So like the idea here is we have this 1 hour, we're creating content, and we should create as many pieces as possible. We should rip this into little chunks. We should find ways to make this contextual to IGTV versus LinkedIn versus whatever. And further, it's also like you're a busy person, you have other things to do. If you're, you know, not that busy yet because you're early in your career or whatever it may be, then like go ham, go do all sorts of crazy stuff. But if you're busy, it's just a reality that you have limited time, and batching is the more efficient option.
You should wear 2 microphones at one time.
Double mic, got Kelsey blowing.
You can be cool like Aaron. So before we go, Aaron, tell our community how they can connect with you and follow you, and any events that you have coming up or anything else you want them to know about.
I mean, if people are podcast listeners, Going Deep with Aaron Watson is a fantastic complement to Marketing Mondays with Meg, and will allow you to learn from a bunch of different interesting characters, whether it's, I mentioned Jason Wolf, the tech entrepreneur, Bree Conley, the boutique owner. We go on and on down the list of the interesting characters, but you'll learn something every week. And then if you like an event, like I've articulated with the Going Deep Summit, you can head to goingdeepsummit.com and check out the tickets. We'll have speaker announcements very, 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 very soon. And if you're interested in having Piper help you produce some of that content because you're in a different place where you have the budget, you have the desire, and you don't necessarily have the time or the expertise, we are excellent partners for doing that.
Great. And then I will, if you give me the information for the summit, I will have that in the description below.
Awesome.
So people can find that.
Cool.
And so I think that's it for today. If you like this podcast, please be sure to subscribe so you won't miss upcoming episodes. And you can also join our new Facebook group, Marketing Mondays with Meg, where you can connect with other business owners and ask your questions and help each other out. And we'd love to have you be part of that. And if you want more marketing tips, please visit my website, thebrandaccelerator.com, and sign up for my e-blasts, which come out every Monday morning. So thank you again, Aaron, for being with us today. This was great.
My pleasure, Meg.
I
Thank you for having me.
appreciate it. And thank you, Matt, for producing. And so until next week, be sure to inspire other business owners because together we can change the world. Have a great week, everyone.
All right. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
That was great.
That was awesome.
It was fun.